What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me today on the Routine Revenue Podcast. Today we have Matt Pitkin out of Boise, Idaho, who has acquired a laundromat just in the last couple of years. He actually went in to buy a piece of property that had a laundromat in it. The owners didn't really know what kind of revenue it was doing or how it was performing. He's been able to take that from $6,000 to over $12,000 a month in a pretty short amount of time. That's somewhat of a passive investment for him. In addition to that, Matt started a SaaS company on the side that's performing really well and doing nearly $50,000 a year in revenue in a very short amount of time. If you hang in there, he's actually looking to exit that business. If you have any interest of acquiring a small SaaS business, Matt's story is really interesting to hear how he's gone from 0 to 1 and made some of these small investments that have become somewhat passive for him and allowed him to scale into other ventures. Thanks so much for joining me. If you would like and subscribe, be incredibly grateful. Enjoy the show. Just a quick heads up, we had some really challenging times with the audio on this one, and so the edit's a little bit weird sometimes, but I think you get the gist. Hope you enjoy. All right, Matt, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, buddy.
Excited to talk through your journey in acquiring Laundromat, and maybe let's just start. And would love to hear your background and kind of how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, well, it's a long, windy path, but I'll spare you some of the details. Started mowing lawns, I think, when I was like 8 or 9. So I think that was about where it began.
Nice.
And then when I did my first deal with my dad. He's a longtime commercial broker. I flipped a mobile home with him when I was somewhere around that age, 8 or 9. And he owned part of a mobile home park. So I saw that firsthand. And then over time, I ended up in college. I think before, maybe it was just during college, I ended up flipping mobile homes again. It wasn't anything sexy or impressive, but it was an interesting, simple business model. And I would sell them on contract, carry the note. It wasn't really passive income, but it was a taste of that. And then that was after college. I ended up buying real estate with my dad in 2007, 2 properties, one to flip and one to develop. And I ended up just losing my shorts when the market tanked in 2008, which I knew at the time was going to be really valuable learning, but at the time it sucked. It was miserable to go through. But looking back, hindsight, years later, I reread the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'd read it first in college, read it again like 10 years ago, finally read it again about 5 years ago. And it clicked that back then I was playing the capital gain game.
Yeah.
And that wasn't working for me. The cash flow game was really where it was going to be for me. So anyway, after I lost money in real estate in 2008, ended up starting a nonprofit that I did for like a dozen years or so. And I learned over time that I built this organization, busted my butt to build it, did a good job with it, but it wasn't an asset, right? I didn't own it. I couldn't leverage it. I had no equity. Literally when I stepped out, my buyout, let's call it, my bonus at the end was a laptop and an iPad that we had to get rid of it anyway, but that's where I realized, I got to get out of this. And so I'm an entrepreneur by nature. I'm a for-profit guy, and I was getting frustrated being in nonprofit world because it just didn't fit me. I'm grateful for the experience. I'm glad I was able to do what I did, but it didn't fit me as an entrepreneur. And so I was looking. My timeline's all over the place right now. But this was about 6-7 years ago. I was really frustrated being in nonprofit. My wife was working full-time still. And I had a salary from the nonprofit, but I wanted to have my own business and have the freedom to enjoy the fruits of what I built. And so I had this idea. I didn't know what to do with it. And I ended up turning it into a business. It's an HR business, a small software as a service. And that was my segue out of nonprofit. And that slowly grew after I decided to get out. And it's still a small business, but that was how I wove into nonprofit, back out, and have focused since then on really building passive income. We had a baby on the way 4 years ago. My little guy just turned 4 yesterday. So 4.5 years ago, I was still leading the nonprofit, had this startup, right? That was making no money. It was a break even. And I had no assets to speak of. And I just got frustrated, knew I needed to get out of nonprofit. So I focused on that business, but I dove hard back into Rich Dad Poor Dad, that book, read every one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, played the cash flow board game with my dad, and then immediately just started making changes. Cause I was just, to be honest, I was just pissed off about where I was. I worked so hard, but didn't have assets and didn't have cash flow. So, but we'd had money set aside in my wife's 401k and IRAs through her job. And so we started making offers on small multifamily properties in Indiana, where I went to college. And that was a segue out of nonprofit into more passive income, and then a winding path to where I'm at now. So that was a really long answer to a brief question.
So before we go, there's a few areas I want to click into. Let's talk about the SaaS product. Like, I mean, most of my audience here is a lot of SaaS people, right? Specifically in Utah.
Sure.
They're in that world every single day. A lot of them want to build a side hustle. SaaS is kind of all they know. Right. I would love to hear like what you've done with that. Maybe even specifically the transition, as sounds like you're leading a nonprofit. You start building this SaaS product on the side.
Right.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah. So the nonprofit was focused on sexual abuse and assault and helping people move forward with their lives. Because I went through that as a kid, and that's, me going to a counselor is what got me to start the nonprofit. Because the counselor changed my life. So that was there. That was the world I was in. And then my wife had an experience at a work party at a great company, by the way, great company. Coworker got drunk, grabbed her rear end, and she just didn't know what to do, and she's friends with the HR team. So she didn't want to cause problems. She loved the company, didn't want to get this guy fired because he had a family, all these things. And so that right there, I'd already had this idea of something in that space to get out of nonprofit sort of business around it, because it's just what I was in. And that showed me the exposure that businesses have to a very common problem. And she just didn't know what to do. So that's a problem right there, because everyone has policies and procedures, but here she was not knowing what to do. And so I had this abstract idea. It was pretty bad at the time, like most startup businesses. But I would work with a creative agency in San Diego for years. I live in Boise, Idaho, but worked with a creative agency down there that did our creative for the nonprofit. And I was with them, telling them this idea to create kind of like a B Corp in a sense, but that was the original idea, like a symbol, a mark where you're making a promise to be a better type of company. And here's the suite of, product that it includes, but you're making a public promise here. And so they really liked the idea. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have any money. And they offered to, we'd had a long-term relationship with me. They knew me and trusted me. And they offered to front the creative and the dev to build it in exchange for a rev share. So I said, yeah, well, just, and it was a lot of fun. We built this, I think, a really good product, well built. It's called WeVow, WeVow. And so it eventually turned into an HR product by nature. I didn't know anything about HR when I started it. I even remember asking my wife, what is HR? I mean, I know what it stands for, but what do they do? And so creating this product, it includes a reporting platform and counseling benefits. So if an employee reports an incident as a victim, they have access to free counseling through a partnership I already had, through the nonprofit world. And then the leadership team has access to HR consulting. And then we built a training because everyone kept asking, do you have a training? And I thought, no, sexual harassment trainings are the worst thing in the world. But then I thought, well, there's the opportunity to create something better. And so it's all in one. And I thought that all these businesses were going to buy it. I thought we were going to get big businesses all over the place. And it was just a slugfest to get one client at a time. It was the most agonizing experience. But we have a good product, and we ended up working primarily with breweries at this point. And we fit a much broader audience, but that's been our focus, where we've had success thus far. My problem, funny, with your audience, my problem is sales. I haven't figured out how to sell the product. I'm good at building, and it turns out scaling is not something I have had success with that or the nonprofit. So I'm actually looking. I have a few people I'm talking with about buying it, but anyway, so it's not really what I'm good at. I'm good at building, not scaling, and but I haven't. I'm really grateful for it. So
I'm so curious because
yeah,
you know, you basically got a product off the ground and were able to take it to market with what it sounds like just a relationship you had. Like there was
yeah,
kind of no
yeah,
cost on your side. This agency
yeah,
builds it and
yeah.
says, just give me a percent of rev share or whatever. And now you can go sell it. But how has that
Right.
done? I mean, where's that now? I'm sure it's, what was it, small? You got a
It's
handful
really
of
small,
customers,
really small.
but
Yeah, we
it
got
makes money
yeah.
or what?
Yeah, it's profitable. Yeah, I think it cost me. I had to pay $5,000 for the URL, which at the time just seemed absolutely ridiculous to have the .com. We've had .com. It's like, do you really need the .com?
Yeah.
Everyone said you did. I still don't. Still not convinced. Um, but I had some cash, but very little into it. Really, just time. And yeah, now it's gotten to the point where it's basically totally passive. Which is why, like, I could focus on building it more. It's primed to be built out to a bigger product, and expanded. I mean, you can change the words on the homepage and expand the product just like that. But it's just not, I feel like I've kind of tapped my creative
Sounds
juices
like
for it, but
nobody's proactively selling or anything.
no, and most of our clients have come passively through partnerships, that I've had. But the product is, I think I spend honestly about 2 or 3 hours a month on it right now. And so I'm very grateful for that. And it's, it's producing cash flow, but it would do better in someone else's hands, which is why I'm talking to a few people. They can scale it. They already have existing structures, and it would add to their product offering. And that's where it should be, I believe, to grow it.
Do you
So
mind sharing about where it's at in revenue? What does it do monthly, and
yeah,
what does it
I
sell?
always go, well, am I making a mistake by sharing this stuff? We're really small. We do like 60 grand a year growth,
Okay.
but it's like 90% margin. And
I mean, that's a great little business.
it's a great business. Absolutely. That's why I say if
I think most of the people in the audience
I,
would
oh,
say like, hell yeah, sign me up. I'll take
trust
that
me,
and
I
take it to the
get it.
next level.
Trust me, I get that. Yes, if it was my thing and I knew how to grow it, I mean, I would spend all my time on it because I know I could multiply it, to make a lot of money, but it's just it's not how my brain works. If I'm to be perfectly honest, I haven't cracked the code on it. So
So
yeah,
is that
anyway.
agency still involved? They help with supporting it on the technical side?
No, I bought them out of the rev share last year. And, so it's just mine now. I still have my partners that do implementation on HR and consulting side. But it's just, yeah, just me. I've never had employees. I've never been broke. Well, I haven't had very many employees anyway, ever, but everything's been contracted, which has worked well. So my overhead's low and predictable.
Nice.
So anyway, yeah.
That's great.
Anyway.
Great business. So
Yeah, I'm great for it.
coming back, you transition out of nonprofit. Where did you built the SaaS product a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, where'd
Mm-hmm.
you go from there?
Yeah. So I decided to leave the nonprofit, focus on WeVow. It had a growth spurt, pure answer to prayer. And then, but it didn't bridge the gap for me with my salary. My wife had just left her job. The growth spurt with WeVow hit a good chunk of the gap, but I still needed to cover that space. And we had, at the time, I think we had 2 rental properties, maybe 3. And so I made an offer on what turned out to be a real piece of crap motel outside Boise, that I thought was a screaming deal, and turned out there's a reason why it was a screaming deal. Because I made that offer and got that under contract, I called a friend who had a similar property, and I asked him how it was managing it. In that conversation, he mentioned that he just opened a laundromat, and which had always been one of those in the back of my mind, cash flow type of businesses, fairly passive, but that was about as much as I knew about him. But I was intrigued that he'd opened one, and so I was just fascinated. So I dove into that, and I was interested in starting one from scratch building a new one as a side business. And I didn't have very much cash. And I didn't have much at the time. And so I wasn't sure how to go about that. My dad, longtime broker, I asked him, you're not going to see one on the market, but if you happen to, let me know. And it was like a week or two later, he sent me this flyer, and it was poorly made that included laundry equipment. And it was confusing. Like, I didn't know if that meant it included a laundromat, but it didn't say it did. So I just assumed it was the building. And I was actually more interested in opening a new one. I liked the idea of a shiny brand new store, but I knew, God, a lot of capital. It'd be a lease rather than real estate. And I'm a real estate guy. I've learned I believe in it. I understand it. And so anyway, made an offer on this place and asked if they would do seller carry. It wasn't marketed as that, but they said yes. And this was in late 21. So the market was still hot, but you could feel that it was going to cool. And then they hadn't upped interest rates yet. Anyway, they said yes to that, bought it on 30-year amortization at 7% on 2-year balloon. So we knew we had a ticking clock, but I could lock it down. And in order to buy it, I had to sell a property we had in Indiana, did a 1031 exchange on that. I brought my dad in as a 25% partner, and he's the broker on the deal anyway. So we ended up getting the building, of course, but it turned out it did include the laundromat. It was this really strange situation where the people who built the laundromat used to own the building, ended up selling to someone on a handshake, and it was this weird deal. That person was planning to sell it back to them, but she passed away. The family inherited it, and they didn't see that deal going the way that had been talked about. And I don't understand how that structure was to this day. I'm not going to speculate, but we ended up buying it. And the reason that it included the laundry equipment is because the person who'd run the laundromat for the longest time didn't own any of the equipment in it anymore, because they sold the building and everything in it. So we got the laundromat, which we had to make the deal work. We had to have that included. We started operating that on day one, but we didn't know the revenue of the laundromat because we couldn't verify it because it wasn't truly owned by the sellers of the property. So we bought the real estate, got the laundromat with it, and then ended up operating that as is for the next 7-8 months. And then we did a total retooling and renovation and put new debt. We put long-term debt on it before rates went sky high.
So to be clear, you bought the building. What else is in the building? What was attractive to the building that just so happened to have a laundromat?
It's a really interesting building. It's in a rural area outside Boise, in the downtown area. So it doesn't include parking, which is it'd be nice to have our own parking, but we have street parking. So it's a 16,000 square foot building, 8,000 down, 8,000 up. The upstairs is completely vacant. It's unfinished and rough. So we ended up renting that out to an antique dealer. And then there was so there are 2 units on the bottom floor. There's the laundromat, and there's another unit that's, it was occupied by a church. And so we inherited them as a tenant. We still have them in there. They're a great tenant. But we increased revenue on it by renting upstairs, and we set it up in 2 LLCs. The building is owned by one LLC. Laundromats is separate, which pays rent to the building. And
so at the time you bought it, was the laundromat in operation? It was working.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it was like 15 years old, and it was getting tired. It was still working. It was making money. We had our regulars, but the machines were showing age. The whole place was just looking tired, needed a facelift. And I wasn't planning on retooling and renovating it when we bought it, because we didn't even know what revenues. But revenue was better on the laundromat than we expected, which never happens, right? You usually buy something and you go, "Oh crap, this is as good as I hoped." So really grateful for that. But then in the process, I became friends with my friend's distributor, with Electrolux. He owns 2 stores himself, so he knows the business well. And it just became clear that, for the long game, which I was in it for, we want to build this to be a nice growing business, rather than one that's going to slowly do this, and our expenses were getting a little high with maintenance and even with utilities because they're inefficient machines because they're 15 years old. So I was just tired. It wasn't a place that I would want to go do my laundry at. And I thought, let's make it make it the best one in town.
So the
So
purchase price of the building, it did include the laundromat, but it didn't view it as like an additional
yeah,
asset to the building.
no,
Yep.
because no, it was a really weird situation, which typically make the best deals, right? They're just
Yeah.
strange situations.
Why
And
is is it because the previous owner wasn't involved with the laundromat, or?
yeah, they had no idea what the numbers were because they just saw it as a building, right?
Yeah.
They leased out the whole building to this individual or this couple, and they ran it and subleased the other units. So to the family that was selling it, it was just a building that they didn't want to deal with. I'm sure. I never even met them. It was just something they didn't want to deal with. And if they were the ones who'd purchased it originally, maybe they would have been more involved. I mean, you never know what people's situations are, but
It sounds
it was
like
probably a headache.
maybe they inherited the laundromat or something
They
and
did.
ran it.
Yeah, they
I
did.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. It was a strange deal. They inherited it. Their mom had bought it on a handshake. Well, she bought it with an agreement to sell it back to these people at a X price, which I don't know what that was, if it was a good deal or bad deal, or but they
So
weren't
you
gonna.
you go into this deal with the expectation, like, I'm looking at a building, I'm buying a building with 3 essential units
Mm-hmm.
under this. You're going to the cash flow of, well, the church that existed and the one that was vacant, but you could get it, leased out by square foot or whatever. And
Yeah.
then this black box of maybe there's a laundromat and there's an opportunity here to add
Yeah. Yeah.
as an additional asset or separate it out. It
Right.
sounds like, which is what you did, in
Right.
its own
Right.
entity that pays the
Right.
interest.
Yeah. For a couple reasons. Yeah. Liability protection, but also for passive. So we
Right.
really, even to this day, we're still like break even on the laundromat because we pay rent to the building. So our income is really passive. And we'll get it to where we're actually profitable on the laundromat. We are technically profitable, but
But you pay it all back to the
yeah,
owner.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
makes
So I've
sense.
learned lots through the experience. It's been a fascinating one.
How many machines? What kind of size? Is that how you measure a
Yeah,
laundromat, right?
man, no, I mean, yeah, but it's volume of like poundage capacity.
Oh, I
Is it
see.
poundage? Yeah, capacity. Don't ask me about that, but I trusted my distributor on you telling me what should be here and where we'll make money, and great. That's what. Please don't rip me off. I don't think you did, but so we started out with I think we had 22 washers and 20 dryers at the time. And with our renovation, we went to 18 washers and 18 dryers, but they're a different mix. Like we have our biggest is a lot bigger than the biggest we used to have. Got rid of all the top load washers because those just kill you on water and whatnot. And we have our biggest ones in front of the store, and it cascades down. And now we have, like before it was coin only. Now we have coin, card, and app.
Hmm.
And yeah, people have been really happy with it. It was one of those, since like with real estate, you look at the numbers. Here's the purchase price, cap rate, and all this stuff. The factory, fairly simple. I mean, it's not simple, but it's fairly simple to come down to a value. If you're going to income approach, but with this, I didn't know, like the distributor's saying it's going to be around X, but I sure hope so. And so there was a little bit of, sheesh, this has got to work. This better work. But I was hearing from him and from my friend with the new one that, yeah, it'll work. So I trusted them. I don't know if I was to repeat it now, if I would do the same, like, well, they say it's going to work, so here we go. because it was a big chunk of cash for that equipment and the renovation. But it's paid off in terms of it isn't paid off literally, but it has paid off, and it's now we're essentially at the same net cash flow with the laundromat as we were pre-renovation, but we now have a nice new growing business. We've improved the building a lot, and we're definitely the nicest laundromat in town. There are two of us, so we got a 50% shot, and we did
Nice.
it.
So can you give me an idea of like revenue of a laundromat and
Yeah,
machines? What does that look like?
we're like when we started, I think we were at like 6K a month, just the laundromat gross with our old machines. And now we of course had to raise our prices a lot, which they were already old prices anyway, but all new equipment. And now we are somewhere around 11.5 a month. Plus so we've almost doubled. And then we have a wash and fold side as well, where people drop off their clothes. We do their laundry for them. And that's still small. It started out $150 a month last January. Now I think we're up to 900 a month. So, but it's incremental, it's slow, which laundry is that way. It's not one of those where
Right.
boom, you're just huge, which this with vending. It's slow and incremental, but it's really sticky. They come to you and they're going to keep coming to you. So yeah,
That's pretty significant from 6 to 11K.
it is. But so is our debt service, right? Our debt service is pretty huge. So it has to be that big.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So
So
you had to go out, obviously the reinvestment, line of credit, or however you did that, finance that.
yeah, yeah.
So all of that is getting poured back, well, either into debt service or paying the lease, which is back to yourself, which is ideal.
Right. So we're cash flowing off the building itself,
Yep.
just about the same amount as we were pre-renovation, but now we have a lot of principal pay down, equipment
Additional
depreciation. Yeah, oh yeah,
building,
for sure. Yeah. We now have two different assets. I mean, we did before, but we could have turned around and sold the laundromat if we'd chosen to at the time. It would have made a lot of sense. That's not why I bought it, but I bought the building. But now we have a true business, a nice business, and a nice building, and that's what I've learned. I really like that model. I really like the business, real estate,
with a
business
building.
buys the real estate. I really like that model, and that's not how all laundromats are. And it's a different animal than going in on a lease, of course. So it has pros and cons, but yeah.
My father did a lot of the same stuff when he owned a construction business, and
Mhm.
he would end up buying the building personally or under a certain LLC, and
Yeah.
then the corporation would lease the building back
Right.
from him.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And really for liability protection, in my opinion, it's just way smarter to do it that way.
Yeah. So what's next? I mean, what's your take on laundry? How passive is it actually? Like, what does your day-to-day look like in running that?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I go to Dutch Brothers Coffee every so often, and I'll camp there and get a coffee. They'll say, "Well, what are you doing?" I'll say, "Oh, I'm a laundromat. We got to go to my laundromat." Yeah, so I've been on TikTok. You show up and you pull
You
the
just pull money
quarters
out
out,
of it.
and
That's how it works. Same with vending.
it's
People
all
just show up
I-
and pay. It's that easy, right?
it's magic, man. It's magic. Yeah. So it's not quite as passive. By the way, as I talk, my windows are fine. You got this crappy flip cam driving. So if you want to know how full of hot air I am, you have proof right here. So so it's not passive, but I've learned I'm pretty good, I think, like with my SaaS company and with this, I'm pretty good at building and then removing myself as best I can from businesses. And it's not like it's a complex business, but I learned quickly the place needs to have someone clean every day, right? Not a long time, but every day. I mean, there are certain days where you can skip it, but people are slobs. People will make a mess. Dryer sheets will be all over the floor. Soap will be spilled on stuff. And so I had one person who wasn't so great. I swear, man, I never get phone calls, and now I'm doing. That was a laundromat phone call, by the way, but so I apologize. Um, so I have a cleaner who's fantastic, which to me is kind of the linchpin if I'm an owner, especially away from my house. This one's 45 minutes away from my house, so I have to have someone who's great, and she's about 20 hours a week, give or take. Um, and I pop in before renovation. I would pop in twice a week, sometimes more, really because I had to collect coin. But now since we have card readers, it's a lot. I can go a lot longer, but I pay visits out like once a week. Um, but I'm still on the receiving end of phone calls. I could hand that to her, but I handle that, and I'm good at customer service. So if there are problems with the machine, which we've had some tech issues with, I don't know if it's our card readers or the machines, but I've been able to solve those problems and convert people. But I'm spending not a lot of time. I'll invoice our wash and fold customers as they happen, like once a day or every couple of days, and then I'll take a call or two a day, some text, but really not a lot of time. So, but it took some time to get to that point.
I've looked into laundromats a little bit. It sounds like wash and fold is kind of the biggest opportunity once you have that infrastructure in place.
I think so.
to
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah, I think so. And I need to tap into that more. I need to market it. But what I've learned is it's a nice offset of labor costs at this point
Hmm.
because, my gal Scarlett, she'll show up and she's contracted too. So she shows up when she shows up. Um, but if we have laundry for her, she'll throw it in the washer. She'll get going with what she's doing anyway. And then she'll throw it in the dryer. So it's happening anyway. So it's a nice offset there because it is a cost you have to have with labor. So the goal, of course, getting that to be a profitable side business, but it's a nice little, and we've made that fairly passive. We have lockers that we built in the front of the store. People drop their laundry, text or call us. She does their laundry, weighs it, tells me the weight. I invoice them via Square, and I give them a key code to the lockbox, and no one has to. I don't have to have someone there physically to meet customers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, if we were
Thoughts on
busier, I'd have them longer. But go ahead.
what are your thoughts on like being able to manage a laundromat outside of your region? I think that's like a really common question. I looked at a couple in Houston that were for sale a long
Oh,
time
okay.
ago, and um, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was hesitant
Yeah.
to pull the trigger on anything like that. That was
Yeah.
a 2.5 hour flight away, even. But as you scale,
Yeah.
and now that you have some of that foundation in place, do you
Yeah.
think that's a realistic thing to do?
That's a good question. I think if you understand the business and have done it close first, I definitely wouldn't want to have my first laundromat be a 2.5 hour flight away. Um, because things just happen. But I mean, for me now, I have Scarlett, she's my gal. But if like she just lost her mom in Portland, Oregon. So she was just suddenly had to leave, right? So I had to have someone fill in. If I didn't have other people to fill in, it would have been me.
Mhm.
And it was for a couple days actually. And then anytime something breaks, which with new equipment, it's not a big problem, but things still break, and I have a couple maintenance guys who are great and will swing out, but you have to have them. It's like having a rental property without a property manager in another town. It's like, yeah, you can do it. It's just, there'll be some moments where it won't be so great and customers probably won't be so happy, but you could theoretically do it. You'd have to have, I think, card only if you're going to do that though, or you have someone who you can absolutely trust to collect coin, which I'm sure you have that with vending. So you know better than I do on that side of it. I know that definitely happens with vending routes. So if you have a really good system and structure um for recording money and keeping that side of it honest, I think you could do it. But I definitely wouldn't do it as my first go. I
Yeah,
personally, you know,
yeah, makes
this is
sense.
me. Yeah.
Um, so we got a few minutes left here, Matt. I think a lot of questions I get often, specifically on laundromat vending, things like this, is
Yeah.
a lot of the audience or people that will listen to this are people that are looking, they have full-time jobs. Like how can they start to dabble into some of these smaller acquisitions potentially? that are somewhat passive. And I think vending can be somewhat passive, even
Sure.
a decent sized route, we could spend 5 to 6 hours a week on it. It's something someone can do outside of a W-2 relatively easily. I
Yeah.
mean, I think to some extent, laundromats can be like that. It's similar to real estate.
Sure.
It's a
Sure.
form of real estate, right? So,
For sure.
um,
Yeah.
well, any advice or feedback or thoughts on people that may be looking into laundromats, potentially as an option or an investment strategy that you could share early on, as they're looking into pursue something?
Are we talking about laundromat specifically, or are we just talking about general like passive income, or what? What are we
Uh,
at?
I think both, since you have experience with
Yeah. 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 This may be too much stepping back, but with how my brain works, I think the most valuable thing for me, if you haven't done it yet, would go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's what I would do first. And for me, it was narrowing down the principles of what I was after. Um, I learned that cash flow was really what I was after, and learning the principles of how that works, how money works. So once I had a framework of that, then everything I do fits under that in a different way, whether it's laundromat, real estate. I have a couple dump trailers that I rent out by the day. But I think if you understand what the heck you're doing and you're not just watching a TikTok video and then go dumping 100K or 200K into something, because people do that. People will throw a bunch of money into something they don't understand. And they go, oh, crap. So I'm a due diligence guy. Make sure you're doing it, but not analysis paralysis. Because I've also learned that you just got to take action and do stuff. So I would, I think once you understand, once for me, the cash flow side's understood and the principal side of business is understood, I would even take a really simple action to learn, but also to build confidence. And here's a dumb example. Like I've talked to a number of friends about this. I have a couple dump trailers, like I just mentioned, that I park outside my house. And I was trying to hit a cash flow goal last year. I had a gap to fill, and I had a month to get there. And so I thought, you know what? I'm gonna buy a dump trailer, rent it out by the day or the week or whenever, see if it makes any money. And it did. Not a lot, but it made some. And I removed myself mostly from it. So it's fairly automated, not completely, but fairly. And it makes a little bit of cash. It pays down debt because I bought them on debt. And there's almost no, like, if the business flops, I just sell the dump trailer. And I'm probably not going to lose money. If I do, it'll be like $1,000 max. But that was a really simple way. Also, like learning principles, but also I get a little I get a little boost every time I see a, $85 come through. It's like $85 just showed up for this silly dump trailer. I didn't have to do a dang thing. They're going to come pick it up themselves. All I'm going to do is give them my address and a lockbox key code, and they're going to do the work on themselves. They can hit it with a sledgehammer. I don't care. I don't have to go detail it like I would a car on Turo or an RV that I've rent. So that's a good confidence builder and just simple way to make money with so little risk, especially in a market like now. It's just kind of a weird market. And I think my first trailer, I had $39 into it, or 35, because all I had to do was register it. And I got 100% loan on it, which I didn't even know that was possible. And so stuff like that, I would just take action, because you can read all you want to and study and think for 10 years. And then we really wish you'd just taken action 10 years ago. So if you lose $1,000 on a dump trailer or on whatever, it's a pretty darn valuable education versus $1,000 in books and without any action. So I would just take action, learn some principles, take some really simple action that'll build confidence and not wipe you out if it goes poorly.
Yeah, that's great.
I can't give a short answer to anything, as you've learned.
That's great. Matt, appreciate you taking the time to talk through some of your experience today. If anyone wants to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way they can get in contact with you?
I guess Matt at wevow.com, wevow.com. Laundry on Hayes is my laundromat.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, man. Good to see you.